All right, let's jump into some of these NBA games you wanted to catch up on. We've got five matchups to dig into, and there's a lot more to them than just looking at the final scores.
Definitely, yeah. We're gonna break down some of those key moments and figure out what they tell us about the teams.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with that Grizzlies game. They just destroyed the Pelicans.
Yeah, it wasn't even close.
139 to 126.
Yeah.
Ja Morant, another big game, 35 points, 10 assists. I feel like everyone always talks about his scoring, but 10 assists, that's saying something, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, is he becoming more of a complete point guard than just a highlight machine?
Absolutely. I mean, this game was like a masterclass in controlled aggression. He was drawing the defense in, finding the open man. If he keeps this up, it's going to be a nightmare for other teams.
Yeah, I can see that. And Zion, he had a good game for the Pelicans too,
Yeah, 30 points for Zion.
but it wasn't enough to stop the Grizzlies.
No, not at all. I think the Pelicans, they really struggled to keep up with the Grizzlies' pace, especially on defense. They got to figure that out if they want to compete with teams like Memphis.
Okay, let's move on to the Sixers and the Cavs. That one was close, huh?
Oh, yeah, nail biter, down to the wire.
132 to 129.
Yeah.
Embiid was unstoppable. 40 points, 15 rebounds. I mean, we see dominant centers all the time, but is there something about Embiid, about his game, that makes him stand out to you?
I think it's his versatility. He's not just a back to the basket center anymore. He can score from anywhere. It makes him so hard to guard.
Yeah, and that's kind of becoming like the model, right? For the modern NBA big man.
Absolutely. He's like the prototype.
Darius Garland, he played hard for the Cavs, though.
Yeah, 28 points, 10 assists.
Really stepping up as their leader.
Oh, for sure. He's the engine that makes them go. But what's interesting is the Sixers bench, they actually outplayed the Cavs bench, and that was huge in that win.
Oh, interesting. So sometimes it's those role players, right, that can make the difference.
Yeah, especially in close games like that.
How about the Blazers and the Hornets? That was a bit of a grind, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely a lower scoring game, but still a lot of intensity.
102 to 97. Damian Lillard, another clutch performance, 28 points, 7 assists. I mean, sometimes I hear people say that Lillard forces shots in the clutch. Like he tries to do too much. Did you see that at all in this game?
No, not really. I mean, I saw a veteran player, he controlled the tempo, knew when to take over, when to set up his teammates. That composure under pressure, that's what makes him a winner.
And LaMelo Ball, he had a good game too. I feel like he's really, really developing.
Yeah, his playmaking's getting better and better.
25 points and 8 assists.
I was impressed with the Hornets' resilience too. They were down, but they fought hard till the very end.
It's a good sign.
Definitely it's a sign of a team that's like developing a winning mentality.
So what was the key to the Blazers winning this one?
I think it was their defensive adjustments in the fourth quarter. They started like trapping LaMelo on the pick and rolls,
Yeah.
forcing the other Hornets to make plays, and they couldn't handle the pressure.
That's smart coaching, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's talk about the Clippers. They just blew out the Wizards.
Yeah, they dominated that game.
110 to 93. Kawhi Leonard had another just stellar performance.
Oh yeah, 32 points, 9 rebounds.
What stood out to you about the Clippers?
It was their defense. It was suffocating. They were switching on everything, daring the Wizards to take them one-on-one, and they had an answer for everything Washington tried. That kind of defense, that's championship caliber.
Yeah, they were locked in. Bradley Beal, he still scored 24 points for the Wizards.
Yeah, he did.
But it felt like he had to work so hard for every single bucket.
Yeah, that's the point. They made it tough on him. The Clippers' strategy forced them to become a one-man show, and that doesn't usually work out too well.
Last but not least, we got to talk about Steph Curry.
Ah, Chef Curry.
The Warriors beat the Bulls 131 to 106. And Curry, I mean, he was in his element. 38 points, 8 three-pointers. Is it just me, or is Curry shooting like supernatural at this point?
I mean, he's been defying the laws of physics for so long, it almost feels normal now. But, what people often miss is the Warriors passing. They move the ball so well, it creates open shots for everyone.
Yeah, and that's what makes him so difficult to defend.
Exactly. If you're focused on one guy, someone else is going to be open.
Zach LaVine, he had a decent game for the Bulls again.
Yeah, he had 27.
But they just couldn't keep up with the Warriors.
Not even close. They were outmatched, offensively, defensively. It was a tough night for Chicago.
All right, so we've talked about some of the individual performances.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing in these games is that there's more to it than just talent, right? You need chemistry. Like you can see it with the Grizzlies. It's not just Morant. It's how the whole team plays together.
Oh, absolutely. There's a synergy there, an understanding of each other's strengths, and that kind of cohesion, it elevates individual talent.
Right. And then, like on the flip side, you see teams like the Wizards that just feel kind of disjointed. Like they rely too much on Beal to create everything.
Which makes them predictable, right?
Yeah.
Opponents can, they can scout for that and force the team to improvise, and that's when things break down.
So it's like talent alone isn't enough. You got to have the right pieces to fit the puzzle.
Exactly. And that's where role players become so important.
I mean, those guys that, they might not get the headlines, but they do the dirty work.
Yeah, the hustle plays, the gritty contributions that, they can often shift the momentum. Like, think about the Sixers bench outplaying the Cavs bench, or the Blazers defense stepping up late in the game. Those little things can be game changers.
And you got to be able to adapt too, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the teams that can adjust their game plan depending on who they're playing, those are the ones that can solve those puzzles on the fly.
Absolutely. You got to be versatile. Like, look at the Warriors. Everyone knows them for their offense, but they can win with defense when they need to. And that versatility, that's what makes them so dangerous.
So we've talked talent, we've talked chemistry, role players, adaptability. What else should we be looking for, as we analyze these games?
The mental game.
Okay, now you're getting into the deeper stuff. Like you're talking mental toughness, composure under pressure, that kind of thing.
All of that, yeah. Confidence, leadership. It's about those intangible qualities that can be just as important as physical skill.
Like with Lillard hitting those clutch shots for the Blazers.
Exactly.
And Embiid just kind of willing his team to win. But then you got teams that they just seem to unravel under pressure.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? How some teams can handle adversity while others just crumble. Observing that mental fortitude or lack thereof, it can be just as insightful as analyzing the X's and O's.
So it's like we got to look beyond the stats and try to understand the psychology of these teams.
Exactly. Pay attention to body language, post-game interviews. Those little clues that reveal what's going on beneath the surface.
Like we're basketball detectives.
Yeah.
Trying to decode the mental game within the game. All right, before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a moment to kind of process everything we've talked about so far. So we've talked about, star performances, tactical plays, all that. But these games, they also showed us something else that's, really important for winning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's chemistry. You could see it with the Grizzlies. It's
Yeah.
not just Morant. It's the way the whole team works as one.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they've got this synergy, like they understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that kind of connection, it actually makes each player even better.
Right. And then you've got teams like the Wizards. They just seem so out of sync.
Right.
They rely way too much on Beal to make things happen.
Yeah, which makes them easy to figure out. Opposing teams, they can just focus on shutting down Beal and forcing the rest of the Wizards to try to create their own shots.
Right, which they weren't really doing in that game. Nope, not really. So I guess what we're saying is just having talent isn't enough.
Right.
You got to have the right combination of players, the right pieces to fit the puzzle.
100%. And that's why role players are so important.
You mean those guys that don't always get the attention, but they make the hustle plays, the tough plays.
Exactly. Those gritty plays that can completely change the momentum of a game. Like when the Sixers bench outplayed the Cavs bench, or the Blazers defense really locking things down in the fourth quarter, those moments can be huge.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like being able to adapt is important too. Like the teams that can adjust their game plan depending on their opponent, those are the ones that can kind of solve the puzzle in the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Versatility is key. Look at the Warriors. Everyone knows them for their incredible offense.
Yeah.
But they can also win with defense if they have to. And that's what makes them so tough to beat. They can adjust to any situation.
Okay, so we've got talent, chemistry, role players, adaptability. Anything else we should be thinking about when we're breaking down these games?
The mental game.
All right, now we're talking, so you mean like mental toughness,
Yeah.
being able to stay calm under pressure, that kind of thing?
All of that, yeah. Confidence, leadership, focus. All those things you can't really measure with stats. They're just as important as physical skills, maybe even more so.
I mean, we saw it with Lillard hitting those big shots for the Blazers.
Yep.
And Embiid, he just kind of willed his team to victory.
Yeah.
But then you have teams that they just fall apart when things get tough.
Yeah, it's really interesting how some teams can deal with pressure and others just can't. Looking at that mental strength or lack of it can be just as helpful as looking at the stats.
So it's like we need to go beyond the numbers and try to understand what's going on in these players' heads.
Exactly. Watch their body language, listen to what they say in interviews. You can learn a lot from those little clues.
It's like we're basketball detectives.
Uh-huh.
We're trying to figure out the mental game that's happening underneath the actual game. All right, before we finish up this deep dive, let's take a minute to think about everything we've talked about. Kind of wrap our heads around it all. We've covered a lot, from those amazing individual performances to how teams work together and even the mental side of the game. But there's one more thing we should probably talk about.
The future.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what does all this tell us about what we can expect from these teams going forward?
Well, we can't predict the future. No one can. But we can definitely look for, like trends or patterns, things that might give us a hint of what's to come.
So we're like basketball fortune tellers now, looking for signs in the tea leaves of these games.
Uh-huh. More like data analysts, I guess. We're taking all this information and trying to, project it forward.
I like it. Okay, so give me an example. What kind of trends stood out to you?
Well, the Grizzlies for sure. Their young players are getting better so fast and they're playing with so much confidence, it feels like they're just getting started.
Yeah, they've got that swagger.
Exactly. They could be a real problem for other teams for years to come.
On the other hand, you get a team like the Wizards. They seem to be kind of stuck.
Yeah, they're definitely at a crossroads. They got to figure out who they are. They can't just rely on Beal to do everything.
So the Grizzlies, they're on the rise. The Wizards, they've got some work to do.
Yeah.
But hey, anything can happen in the NBA, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen teams turn things around so quickly. That's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, there's always that chance for an upset or a breakout star that no one saw coming.
Exactly. You never know what's going to happen next.
But by looking at these games, at these trends, we can start to get an idea of where these teams might be headed. Try to connect the dots.
Yeah, it's like we're basketball detectives, piecing together clues to solve the mystery of the season.
And it's a mystery that never really ends. Every game, every season, it's a new chapter in the story.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, is there one big takeaway you want our listeners to think about?
Out of everything we've talked about, the talent, the chemistry, the coaching, adapting to different situations, the mental side of the game, what do you think is the single most important factor for a team to be truly successful?
Wow, that's a great question. I guess our listeners will have to keep watching, keep analyzing, keep diving deep to figure out the answer for themselves. Until next time.